And so you need to ask yourself the question, if the Kalenjin voters were faced with a situation where they have one of their own on the ballot, but then it becomes very clear that their own is not going to win the presidential election, that somebody else is going to win the presidential election, what do you think the Kalenjin voter will do? Will they still stubbornly vote for one of their own? Indeed, there is even emerging evidence that in 2017, Raila Odinga got many more votes in the Kalenjin Rift Valley than was officially reported. Yeah, those votes are of course stuck somewhere in a server in France to date. What this tells us is that there are some in the community who really believed that Raila Odinga would win those elections. I'm guessing that many of them came from the Kshs community. Yeah, there was actually a principal from the Kshs community, if you remember, a man called Ruto, who was then the Bomet governor. And those of us who are very keen will also remember that Ruto was rigged out. There are so many funny things that happened in those elections. And it was very clear that the state wanted to make sure that Bwana Ruto is never re-elected governor of Bomet. And of course today we know who was leading the state, the government side, in those elections. In making sure that some people are neutralized, ensuring that some people do not get through, while others get elected. Vifaranga via computer were many. Bottom line, what all this tells us is that the Rift Valley vote, contrary to what many Kenyans may believe, is not obvious. The truth is that it is unpredictable, and chances are quite high that a man called Raila Amolo Odinga could end up with a surprising percentage of votes from William Samoei Ruto's Rift Valley. Oh yes, that is what the facts tell us. And there's another huge advantage Raila Odinga has in this instance. Okay? You know, when you're desperate, there are many things you lose. When you're desperate, people can very easily sense that you're desperate. And human nature is such that we run away, we go as far as possible from people who are desperate. For example, a friend of yours loses a job, and you know that they're in trouble. So every time they try and call you, you know, huyu ananipigia simu kuniitisha pesa. So what do? Some of us are very cruel. We block them. We change our number. We make excuses. Oh, I'm a bit busy, I'll call you back. Please, I'm in the middle of a meeting with the boss. Please, wacha nikupigie. And you never call back. That's human nature. Now, the advantage Raila has got is that he does not need the Kalenjin vote to win the presidential election. Now, that is a huge advantage because he is not desperate for Rift Valley votes. And you know, when you're not desperate for something, you think much clearer. You can be able to do much better in a situation if you're not desperate than if you are very desperate. Now, don't misunderstand me. It is true that there are those within the Kalenjin nation that will never vote for Raila Odinga. That is a fact. But it is also a fact that there are those in the Kalenjin nation that will follow the tradition of the community of not voting for the opposition, of always ensuring that they're in government and that they have their people in as senior positions as possible in government. That is also a fact. It is the truth. Now, if you still think that the Azimio rally in Kericho was nothing, that I'm just blowing it out of proportions, just imagine the following situation. Can you imagine a situation where presidential candidate, Deputy President William Samoei Ruto, has a major rally in Nyanza, Homa Bay, for example? Do you think you'd be able to get this kind of reaction on the ground? This kind of excitement? This kind of vibrant audience? Just think about it. Would he? We know that the Deputy President's camp has been very determined to try and project the Luo community as people who throw stones, violent people. How many times has the Deputy President said, in reference to the community, wale watu wanang'oa reli? How many times? Very many times. This is why I keep on emphasizing on this channel that the character of Raila Odinga is very different, the very opposite from the character of William Samoei Ruto. Because Raila had many opportunities to make funny remarks about the Kalenjin community. He would have easily said, wale watu wa hasira, hasara, or something like that. But Raila Odinga has never made any such comments. Never ever. Because he is well aware that in politics, you play the long game or you're finished. That's really what it is. Playing the long game means you never ever make such remarks as wale watu wanarusha mawe. Those are voters. You never ever make such remarks as wale watu wanang'oa reli. No. You're a politician. And in politics, you either play the long game or you're finished. Things will catch up with you sooner rather than later. And even if they tarry in catching up with you, ultimately, one day, they will catch up with you. Now in Kericho, the KANU party was very well represented. Now KANU today is a small party, a shadow of what it was, ruling Kenya for so many years. Indeed, from independence to the year 2002, when they were removed from power by Mwai Kibaki and Raila Odinga's National Rainbow Coalition. But KANU is still very influential in parts of the Rift Valley, in many parts of Kalenjin Rift Valley. And if you're doubting that, bear in mind that Senator Gideon Moi won the 2017 elections by a landslide. Of course, he had a competitor from Jubilee, who he dealt with. Akamaliza kumaliza kabisa. He won by a landslide. And the KANU party is ndani kabisa, if I was to quote one of their leading lights, of the Azimio chaps. KANU is in Azimio. Therefore, we must conclude that a few votes will come in from KANU deep inside Kalenjin Rift Valley, which just makes the whole situation for the Deputy President on his own home turf even more complicated. That's really what it is. Indeed, somebody said to me a few moments ago the following: if anybody doubted who the 5th president of Kenya is going to be, who is going to actually win that election, unless something out of the ordinary happens, in case somebody doubted, that doubt should have vanished, evaporated at Kericho yesterday. And guess what? I totally agree. And now the question must be, what can the deputy president do this late in the game? I've tried to rack my brains. I have not come up with anything. But the deputy president is a very crafty man. I'm sure he'll come up with something. But you also need to remember that so many other things currently are going wrong for the deputy president and his campaign for the presidency. And maybe for the sake of balance, I don't need to mention them. But I believe many of us can see the things that are going wrong. They are as clear as day. And now in this kind of environment, as all this is unfolding, the deputy president's own backyard has now suddenly become very slippery. Very, very slippery. More than slippery. Courtesy of yule jamaa wa vitendawili. Courtesy of mganga. Those are the names the deputy president uses to refer to Raila Odinga. And we all know that. You know, I wonder sometimes if the deputy president maybe sometimes forgets himself and forgets that he's in politics and forgets that these are not the Kanu days, the days of Kanu Mama and Baba, where you could say anything and it'll have zero political consequences. As long as you're with Kanu, as long as you're with Mama and Baba, Kanu, as long as you're with the Moi, you can say anything and you get away with it. Sometimes I get the feeling that the deputy president is still stuck in that time. Because the way he plays his politics, it is not from any known political rule book. Not even communist Russia. Because how do you insult people you don't like? And these people are voters. Yes, you're sure they're never going to vote for you, or at least that's the way you see it currently, but you don't know tomorrow. Yeah. And you're in politics. How do you do that? Please, somebody explain to me. I understand. I know I'm supposed to be balanced, but somebody explain that one to me. Yeah. What? Anyway, Kericho yesterday, Kericho County, sealed the race for the presidency. That is my position. And now going forward, unless something crazy happens, yeah, and by the way, I have a lot of reason to believe that a lot of crazy things will happen, yeah, but that aside, putting the spiritual aside, assuming nothing happens between now and August 9th, presidential race 2022 has been decided. And the fate of one William Samoei Ruto is obvious. It is kwisha maneno. Without any emotion, that is the bitter truth. Until next time, this is Kshs. Kumekucha.